Curious War fans. I'm your host, Dora Hawkins. I am here with my father, Dwight Hawkins. He is with us today. He is a professor at University of Chicago School at the Diversity School. Welcome, Dad.
Hello, Dora. Glad to be here.
So anyways, let's start with our first question. Your
Well,
background, education. What advice would you give people who want to be an educate who want to grow and learn with their future to young people?
great question. Just to clarify my title, I am the Laura Spelman Rockefeller Professor at the University of Chicago. Just to clarify that. I would say enjoy the process of learning. Don't get too caught up on grades. Don't get too caught up on the specific details, but enjoy the whole process of learning. That's very important, the process. And the other results, high marks, etc., will come. I would also suggest being curious. The key to education, successful education, is when people, when the student, and when the teachers, researchers are all curious about something. I'm just curious about any type of knowledge that comes about. For example, I remember I was in a bookstore one time before books went online. You could go in and just hang out at books all day. And there was a book on pie, and it was the history of pie. So I sat there that afternoon and read the book on the history of pie. That curiosity is one of the key factors that helps people succeed. So enjoying the process of learning and education, being curious, those two things will help young people throughout their lives. The third thing I would suggest is to find something that you're passionate about. It could be anything. But once you follow your passion, education will flow very easily because what you're learning academically or in school is focused on your passion. It helps your excitement. Passion can be anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be a passion just focused within the classroom. It could be that. It could be a passion outside the classroom. Enjoy the process. Always be curious. Follow your passion. And the last thing is to work hard. In my case, I worked very, very, very hard on the front end so I could enjoy life from the back end. That's
Mhm.
something that your grandfather would say. So work, 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 work while you're hard, hard, hard while you're young, and reap the rewards on the back end. Some
Well,
suggestions for education young people.
so that leads to the next question. You say you're a good family man. What family aspects would you give to young people that you would say are important for young people to understand?
Family aspects. It's important to learn the history of your family, to understand the traditions and the values out of which you come. It's also important to learn the history of the family to see what intellectual, emotional, physical traits that were passed down. We might be surprised once we find out about a father or a mother or grandfather, the grandmothers or an uncle, our personalities, some of our physical traits, some of our interests, some of our challenges are found in the history of the family. So family history in terms of values, traditions, family history in terms of what makes me who I am based on family members I come from. And the other thing I think is important, I wish somebody had told me when I was younger, is the importance of recording the older people in the family, catch those stories. They're very important, for example, to read history books, etc. But to supplement the history books is the importance of the oral tradition of people's own family members, and they can fill in um, the different things. For example, as you know, I grew up in a household of 10 people, father, mother. There are 6 sons and 2 daughters.
Well, that's a lot of people.
And yeah, well, back in the day, that wasn't necessarily a big family, but now that would be a big family. And again, all 8 children came from one woman. Um, but now when we get together for Christmases or weddings or funerals, fortunately, they're far and few between, we talk about the history, and it's almost like each of us, each of the 8 children, has one part of the elephant, so to speak. And it's important to hear all. So, for example, your uncle, my oldest brother, Robert, he's 18 years older than I am. When he talks about the history of the Hopkins family, he has a specific view. And then I'm pulling up the rear. As the sixth son and the eighth child. I can tell the history of the family from the bottom. That is the last person who comes through.
Mhm.
Yeah, family is very, very important. Got to work on that. In fact, that's another point I'd like to add is that just as we work on exercising or staying healthy or losing weight or gaining weight, whatever the issue may be, we have to work on the family. It doesn't flow naturally like a spring water down the mountainside. It has to be worked on every day.
Mhm. So, do you think that policies have changed over the years for the better or for worse? If so, how?
And which policies is that?
Just in general, like how policies have, when you were growing up, like how things changed with your policies into like today's world with policies, how they are now.
In terms of children and education, I think the policies are more helpful, generally speaking. It varies different sectors of the country, different classes, income, neighborhoods. But generally, the movement has been to allow children in education, one, to explore more, two, to have their own voice, and three, to appreciate that the best way to be successful in life is to fail many, many times. Back in the day, failure was imperfection, where it's very clear, particularly for people who are in business and innovation, say in Silicon Valley and here in Chicago as well. They have a phrase called fail fast. And so raising children is good for children to explore more, which is a big change. And it's also good for children to fail. It's not even failing, it's just learning. And that's been a big change since the 40s, 1950s.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying that failing is a good thing. Obviously, people in my generation don't see failing as a good thing. So, what would you comment about that? Like, what advice would you say about that, about failure being a good thing?
Well, it's a bad thing if failure is perpetual all the time. But if someone wants to succeed, he or she has to fall, pick themselves up, and learn why they fell so they won't fall again. They will fall or stumble or run into hard challenges in life, but they won't repeat the same hard challenge or fall if they learn from it. So it's everybody wants to see in class, you want to be 4.0, you want to have straight A's, work hard, you want to go to the top schools in the country, people want to do that. So it's a both and. But in the process of working hard and following one's goals and visions, a North Star in life, failure should be seen as an opportunity to learn. And again, I've found that cutting edge thinking in venture capital in Silicon Valley. I've seen that a lot, and also in artificial intelligence industry, you see that as well. People fail and they keep going. Elon Musk. Oh goodness, I don't know how many rocket ships he blew up before he was able to achieve uh, the type of space rocket he has. Uh, Steve Jobs, who died prematurely, talked about it a number of times. He's failed before he succeeded. Michael Jordan had a saying, it's not exact, but the point is he would say, I took, 3,500 shots and missed them all. And then the 3,701 shot was my first three-pointer. He's just giving an example. And we go Albert Einstein. I've been reading biographies of people and autobiographies since I was in kindergarten, actually, literally. And that's my favorite pastime. So I learn a lot from other people.
That is wonderful to hear that you keep learning up into today's world, which leads me to my next question with learning. How would you say that cost effects with people who wanting to continue to go to college would affect their future? Because things are so expensive with inflation. How would you suggest people like get like a figure out the cost with um working and also going to school with the balance of everything?
In terms of the angle of payment for the high tuition, et cetera,
And
um,
how high inflation is right now.
yeah, well, inflation is a whole, microeconomics, political economy, fiscal questions, all of those, which is another podcast. But yeah, in fact, tuition rarely goes down. Given that, people who work hard and learn the process, and enjoy the process, and get good grades are in a better position to get scholarships. So that's always helpful. There are various categories of ways to search for monies for school tuition. One is obviously what opportunities or funding or scholarships or fellowships are hidden or seen or found throughout the university that a student is applying to. There are all kinds of scholarships for minorities, and minorities, and it could be veterans too, but that's a minority, or women. But there are fellowships or scholarships not just in the area of major, not just in finance or venture capital or um, banking or computer science or engineering. They all have fellowships, scholarships. But throughout the universities, there are ways to search for fellowships. So the university culture is one way. Another way, obviously, is the government at all levels. The federal government has opportunities on down to states and counties and cities and villages. And also, there are private sector foundations, both family foundations, but also corporate foundations. Family foundation is a foundation that's like the Rockefeller Foundation, they've set that up for the family over the generations. A corporate foundation, which could overlap, but a corporate foundation is a foundation that a corporation sets up. So if I had venture capital hedge fund or something like that, multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, I could set up a fellowship for people to learn finance, to learn venture capital, to learn computer science, to learn engineering, to learn economics, statistics, theoretical math, school culture, the university, governments at various levels, private sector from family foundations, and also corporations have foundation. And if the student is willing to risk debt, then that opens up a whole another area.
Hmm.
Debt, obviously, from banks. Federal government has debt for loans. Debt is loans, right? Basically, it's synonymous.
Mhm.
But if we move from fellowships, grants, scholarships, which you don't pay back, and move from there to debt, i.e., loans, that opens up another possibility. But a lot of that has to do with how much debt can a student tolerate. Some people have high tolerance for debt. They can leave school with $100,000 and they know they're going to pay it back. For example, when students apply to the PhD program in the humanities, which I'm part of, I said, you really want to you want to spend 9 years, it's an exaggeration, but to make the point, you want to spend 9 years in the PhD program and leave the program with $200,000 debt after 9 years, or do you want to go to the MBA program and after 2 years, starting salary, $200,000? Let's see. 2 years MBA, starting salary, $200,000. PhD humanities, 8 years, debt, $200,000. So people who go to business school or medical school or law school, usually if they're in the top tier in the country, they're going to make some big money. It may take 5 years, whereas it's not necessarily guaranteed. that money's going to come when someone gets a PhD in the humanities. So again, students' toleration for debt or loan.
Okay, my final question for tonight, and thank you for being on here again, is what advice would you give to your younger self as a young person?
Um, I think that's a great question. When I was younger, I thought I was either or. The way I saw the world as far as my life and career was either or. I thought either I had to get an MBA and make money to help people, or I had to go in the humanities like education to help people. And so I chose initially I was going to get an MBA, make a lot of money, and help people, really just help people. Of course, my own self and my family, but also to help serve. And then I I discovered that I had a passion for education, which is the humanities, and I did not go to business school. Looking back and knowing me, my ability and curiosity and what I can do, it could have been both and. I could have gotten a PhD and the MBA and made a whole bunch of money as well as taught in the humanities. Um, in fact, looking back several decades, it's very easy. I know the formula, very easy to do. So that would be one. If I had to do it all over again, I would have gotten both, gone into finance, make money, and taught at the same time.
All right, well, thank you for being on our show. Thank you for taking time with us, and I hope you have a good evening.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.